I said no. Two words that shattered everything Marissa Vale thought she knew about the world. She was 24, beautiful, and had never heard that word from a man in her life. Not when she wanted something, not when she asked directly. But Evan Cole, tired eyes, worn shoes, hands that smelled like lime and whiskey, looked at her like she was just another customer, another face in the crowd. And when she offered him everything most men would kill for, he simply turned away. That refusal became an obsession. That obsession became love. And that love almost destroyed them both. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The Velvet Room didn't look like much from the outside. Just another chrome and glass establishment tucked between a boutique hotel and an overpriced sushi bar in the heart of the city's financial district. But inside it transformed. Low amber lighting pooled across polished mahogany, leather booths curved along exposed brick walls. The air hummed with jazz piano and the low murmur of wealth changing hands over $30 cocktails. Evan Cole had worked behind that bar for 3 years, and he'd learned to read the room like sheet music. The regulars who nursed bourbon and avoided eye contact, the first daters who ordered champagne they couldn't afford, the business deals sealed with handshakes and scotch, the lonely ones who came in alone and left the same way. Tonight felt like every other Thursday. His shift started at 6, and by midnight his feet would be screaming, his lower back would be a knot of fire, and he'd take the last train home to his small apartment where his daughter, Maya, would be asleep, and his mother would be watching late-night television with the volume too loud. Routine, structure, survival. That's all his life was anymore, and Evan had made peace with it. He was wiping down the bar top when she walked in. Marissa Vale moved through the world like she owned it, not with arrogance, but with the kind of easy confidence that came from never being told no. She was younger than most of the clientele, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair that fell in loose waves past her shoulders and a black dress that probably cost more than Evan's monthly rent. Diamond studs caught the light as she tilted her head, scanning the room with the casual assessment of someone deciding which toy to pick up. She chose the bar. More specifically, she chose the seat directly in front of Evan. "Evening," he said, his voice professionally pleasant. "What can I get you?" "Surprise me." Her smile was slow, deliberate. "You look like someone who knows what people need." Evan had heard variations of that line 100 times. He reached for the Hendrix, built her a gin and tonic with cucumber and a twist of lime, and slid it across the polished wood without ceremony. She took a sip, her eyes never leaving his face. "Perfect," she said. "You're good at this." "It's my job." "How long have you been doing it?" "Long enough." Most people would take the hint. The clipped responses, the lack of follow-up questions, the body language that said, "I'm working, not socializing." Marissa leaned forward instead. "What's your name?" "Evan." "Evan." She tested it, like she was trying on jewelry. "I'm Marissa. Nice to meet you." He turned toward another customer, signaling from the end of the bar, grateful for the interruption. But when he returned, she was still there, still watching him with that unwavering attention that made something uncomfortable twist in his chest. The next 2 hours followed a familiar pattern. Marissa ordered drinks she barely touched. She asked questions he deflected. She laughed at things that weren't jokes. And Evan kept working, kept moving, kept the professional distance he'd perfected over years of dealing with customers who mistook service for friendship. At 11:47 p.m., when the crowd had thinned and only a handful of stragglers remained, she finally made her move. "Do you want to get coffee sometime?" Evan looked up from the glass he was drying. "I don't drink coffee." "Dinner then, anywhere you want." He set the glass down carefully. This was the moment, the one he'd navigated a dozen times before, though never with someone quite like her. Someone who looked at him like he was a puzzle worth solving rather than just a service worker worth flirting with. "I appreciate it," he said quietly. "But no." Marissa blinked. It was the first time all night her composure had cracked, just slightly. "No?" "No." "Can I ask why?" Evan could have lied, could have said he had a girlfriend, wasn't interested, didn't date customers. Easy excuses that would end the conversation cleanly. Instead, he told her the truth. "Because I can't afford you." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and honest. Marissa's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to name. Surprise, confusion, something that might have been hurt. And then, unexpectedly, curiosity. "That's," she started, then stopped. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in months." "It's not an insult," Evan said. "It's just reality. You seem like a nice person, but I'm a single dad working 2 jobs who takes the train home because I can't afford parking downtown. You're wearing earrings that probably cost more than my car. There's no version of this that makes sense." "So you're saying no because of money?" "I'm saying no because I know how this story goes. You'd pay for everything because you could. I'd feel like shit about it because I can't. Eventually you'd get bored of playing dress down with the bartender, and I'd be left feeling like I wasted time I should have spent with my daughter, or studying, or sleeping." He picked up another glass, resumed his work. "So yeah, I'm saying no." Most people would have been offended, would have left in a huff, maybe complained to the manager, definitely never come back. Marissa did none of those things. She sat there for another 10 minutes, sipping her drink in silence, watching Evan work with an expression he couldn't quite read. When she finally stood to leave, she placed 2 crisp $100 bills on the bar. "The drink was $12, Evan said. "I know." She smiled, but it was different now. Smaller. More real. "Good night, Evan." She walked out, and Evan told himself that was the end of it. He was wrong. Marissa came back the next Thursday, and the Thursday after that. She didn't flirt anymore, didn't ask personal questions. She ordered her gin and tonic, sat at the bar, and read on her phone or watched the room with that same quiet assessment. Sometimes she stayed an hour, sometimes until close. She always left a $100 tip. Evan tried to refuse it the second time. "This is too much." "It's my money," Marissa said simply. "I can do what I want with it, and what I want is to tip my bartender well. I'm not a charity case." "I never said you were." "Do you give good service?" "I do my job." "Then accept that someone appreciates it." It became a strange, unspoken routine. Every Thursday night, Marissa would appear around 9 o'clock. She'd take her usual seat, order her usual drink, and Evan would serve her like any other customer, except for the growing awareness that she was anything but. He learned things about her in fragments. She worked in venture capital, whatever that meant. She'd grown up in Connecticut. She traveled frequently, Singapore 1 week, London the next. She was an only child. Her parents were still married, still wealthy, still distant in the way that people with too much money and too little time tended to be. She learned things about him too, though he never meant to share them. "How old is your daughter?" she asked one night in early October. Evan had mentioned Maya exactly once in their first conversation. The fact that Marissa remembered surprised him. 7, he said. "What's her name?" "Maya." "Pretty name." Marissa swirled her drink. "Do you get to see her much?" "Every day. I work nights so I can be there in the mornings and after school." "What about your other job?" Evan's hand stilled on the bottle he was holding. "How do you know about that?" "You said you work 2 jobs. I'm curious what the other one is." "Freelance accounting, data entry, bookkeeping for small businesses, stuff I can do from home after Maya goes to bed." "That sounds exhausting." "It is what it is." But Marissa wouldn't let it go. "When do you sleep?" "When I can." "Evan, look." He set the bottle down harder than he meant to. "I appreciate the concern or whatever this is, but I don't need someone feeling sorry for me. I made my choices. I'm handling it." "I don't feel sorry for you," Marissa said quietly. "I'm impressed by you. There's a difference." Evan didn't know what to do with that, so he did what he always did. He moved on to the next customer, the next task, the next hour that needed surviving. But her words stayed with him longer than they should have. November brought the first snow, early and unexpected, coating the city in a thin layer of white that would turn to gray slush by morning. The Velvet Room was quieter than usual, the weather keeping all but the most dedicated drinkers at home. Marissa showed up anyway. She looked different tonight. Tired, maybe. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer ensembles. When she sat down, she didn't pull out her phone. just folded her hands on the bar and looked at Evan with something that might have been vulnerability. Bad day? He asked, already reaching for the Hendrix. Bad month. She accepted the drink when he slid it over. I closed a deal today that I've been working on for 8 months. It went through. Everyone's happy. My bosses are thrilled. Congratulations? Thanks. She took a long sip. I feel nothing. Isn't that weird? I should be celebrating. Instead, I'm sitting in a bar alone on a Thursday night talking to a bartender who turned me down 6 weeks ago. Evan almost smiled. I'm a great listener. Comes with the territory. You're more than that. Marissa met his eyes. You're the only person I know who doesn't want something from me. How do you know I don't want something? Because you already told me no when I offered you the easiest thing I could give. They were quiet for a moment. Snow fell past the windows, visible in the pools of streetlight. Can I ask you something? Marissa said. Sure. That night when you said you couldn't afford me, did you mean it literally? Like, you can't afford to take me on a date? Or did you mean something else? Evan considered lying, considered deflecting, considered all the ways he could protect himself from this conversation. He chose honesty instead. Both, he said. I literally can't afford to date someone who shops where you shop and travels like you travel. But I also meant it metaphorically. People like you're used to a certain kind of life, a certain level of everything. And I'm not talking about just money. I'm talking about time, attention, experiences. I can't compete with that. I don't want to try. Who said anything about competing? It's not about what you say. It's about what would happen. You'd want to take me places, do things. And I'd either have to say no and feel like I'm disappointing you, or say yes and feel like a fraud. Either way, I lose. What if I don't care about any of that? You say that now, but 3 months in, when you want to go to some charity gala and I'm in my one suit that doesn't quite fit anymore, you'll care. Trust me. Marissa was quiet for a long time, her finger tracing the rim of her glass. My last boyfriend, she said finally, proposed to me at a Michelin 3-star restaurant in Paris. He had the ring delivered in a champagne glass. Very romantic, very expensive, very performative. What happened? I said yes. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. We were engaged for 4 months. Then I found out he'd been sleeping with his ex the entire time. When I confronted him, you know what he said? He said I was cold, that I was more interested in my career than him, that being with me was like being with a beautiful statue, impressive to look at, but impossible to actually connect with. That's bullshit, Evan said before he could stop himself. Marissa looked up, surprised. I mean, he felt his face heat. Sorry, that's not appropriate. No, please, continue. It's just, you've been coming here for 2 months. I've watched you. You're not cold. You're careful. There's a difference. You're someone who's been hurt by people who wanted what you have instead of who you are. So you protect yourself. That doesn't make you a statue. That makes you smart. Something changed in Marissa's expression, softened. See, she said quietly, that's what I meant. You see me. Not my bank account or my connections or what I can do for you, just me. I'm a bartender, Evan said. Seeing people is literally my job. It's more than that, and you know it. She was right. He did know it. That was the problem. Marissa, just think about it, she interrupted. Not a date. Not dinner at some fancy place. Just coffee, a diner, pizza. Whatever you're comfortable with. 2 people having a conversation without all the other bullshit. Why does this matter so much to you? Because I'm tired, she said simply. I'm tired of people who want me for the wrong reasons. I'm tired of performing. I'm tired of being alone in rooms full of people. And you're the first person in years who's made me feel like maybe I don't have to be. Evan wanted to say no again, wanted to protect himself, protect her, protect the careful equilibrium he'd built his life around. But he was tired too. 1 meal, he heard himself say. Somewhere cheap, Dutch treat. And if at any point it gets weird or uncomfortable, we walk away clean. No hard feelings. Marissa's smile was like sunrise. Deal. They met at a diner on the south side of town, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner too long. Marissa showed up in jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt, her hair in a messy bun, looking more like a college student than a venture capitalist. Evan almost didn't recognize her. "Is this okay?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from him. "I Googled cheap diners near me, and this had good reviews." "It's perfect." They ordered scrambled eggs and toast for her, a burger for him. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and tired feet, brought them coffee without asking and called them both hon. "So," Marissa said when they were alone again, "do we do the standard getting to know you questions? Favorite color, biggest fear, that kind of thing?" "If you want." "I want to know something real, something you don't tell most people." Evan stirred sugar into his coffee, considering. "I wanted to be a teacher," he said finally. "High school math. I was 2 years into my education degree when I got my ex-girlfriend pregnant. We weren't serious. We'd only been together a few months, but she wanted to keep the baby, and I wanted to do the right thing." "So you gave up teaching?" "I gave up college, gave up the degree. Started bartending because the money was better and the hours were flexible. Told myself I'd go back eventually, finish what I started. That was 7 years ago." "Do you regret it?" "I regret that Maya doesn't have the father she deserves. Someone who's around more, who's not always exhausted. But I don't regret her, not for a second." Marissa was quiet, absorbing this. "What about her mother?" she asked carefully. "She left when Maya was 8 months old. Said motherhood wasn't for her. I haven't heard from her since." "Evan, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. We're okay. Maya's happy. My mom helps when she can. We make it work." He took a sip of coffee. "Your turn. Tell me something real." "I'm lonely," Marissa said without hesitation, like pathologically lonely. "I have friends, I guess, people I work with, people I grew up with, but I don't trust any of them. I always feel like I'm performing, saying the right things, being the right version of myself. It's exhausting. Sometimes I think about what it would be like to just disappear. Start over somewhere no one knows me." "Why don't you?" "Because I'm a coward. Because it's easier to stay in the life I know than risk building something new." Their food arrived. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The diner's ambient noise, clattering dishes, murmured conversations, the hiss of the grill, filling the spaces between bites. "Can I ask you something?" Evan said eventually. "Anything." "Why me? Genuinely, you could have anyone, someone in your tax bracket, someone who fits into your world. Why pursue this?" Marissa set down her fork, met his eyes directly. "Because when you said no that first night, you didn't do it to play hard to get or make yourself more interesting. You did it because you actually meant it. You saw an imbalance and you named it. You protected yourself." She paused. "Nobody's ever done that with me before. Usually people just take what I offer and then resent me for offering it later. You were honest, and that made me want to know you more than anything else could have." "That's a lot of pressure to put on one honest moment." "Maybe, but here we are anyway." Here they were. Evan looked at this woman across from him, brilliant, broken, brave enough to chase something that scared her, and felt something shift in his chest. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of possibility. "Same time next week?" Marissa asked when they stood to leave, splitting the bill exactly down the middle. "Yeah," Evan said. "Same time next week." What started as one meal became two. Two became four. Four became a routine that began to matter more than either of them wanted to admit. They established rules without ever explicitly discussing them. They met in neutral territory, diners, parks, coffee shops in neighborhoods neither of them frequented. Never at Marissa's place, never at Evan's. Nothing that felt like crossing into each other's real lives. They split everything, every meal, every coffee, every ticket to the repertory cinema where they watched old films on scratched prints. Marissa never pushed to pay more, and Evan never suggested she should. They texted, but sparingly. No good morning messages or constant check-ins, just logistics and occasional observations. The barista here definitely hates me, or Maya just told me I'm old because I don't know what Roblox is. It felt safe, manageable. It felt like lying to themselves. December hit the city like a hammer, the kind of cold that turned breath to frost and made bones ache. Evan picked up extra shifts at the bar to cover holiday expenses, a decent Christmas for Maya, something for his mother, the annual increase in heating bills. He canceled their next 3 meetups. Marissa didn't push, just sent simple acknowledgments. No problem. Another time. Take care. But on the 4th missed Wednesday, she showed up at the Velvet Room. It was the night before Christmas Eve. The bar was decorated with tasteful garland and white lights. A jazz trio played holiday standards in the corner. The crowd was lighter than usual, people home with families or traveling for the holidays. Marissa sat at her usual spot and waited. When Evan's break finally came around midnight, he found her still there. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I wanted to see you. I'm working. I can wait." Something in her voice made him look closer. She'd been crying. Not recently, but enough that the evidence lingered in the redness around her eyes, the slight puffiness of her face. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." She attempted a smile. "My parents threw their annual Christmas party tonight. 200 people in our house in Connecticut. I spent 4 hours making small talk with people who kept asking when I was going to settle down, find a nice man, give my parents grandchildren. My mother introduced me to 3 different eligible bachelors, her words, who all worked in finance and all looked at me like I was a networking opportunity." Sounds horrible. It was. She took a shaky breath. "And all I could think about was how much I wanted to be in a diner with you instead, eating terrible eggs and talking about real things." Evan felt something crack open in his chest. "My shift ends at 2, he said. "There's a 24-hour diner 3 blocks from here. Wait for me?" Marissa's smile was real this time. "I'll wait." The diner was nearly empty at 2:30 in the morning. Just them, a tired waitress, and a truck driver hunched over pie and coffee at the counter. They ordered breakfast food because it was all Evan wanted, pancakes and bacon and coffee, that was somehow worse than the diner they usually went to. "Merry Christmas," Marissa said, raising her coffee cup. "Merry Christmas." They were quiet for a moment. Then Evan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "I wasn't sure if I should give you this," he said, "but I wanted you to have it anyway." Marissa's eyes went wide. "Evan, it's not expensive, don't worry." She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a small paperback book. The Little Prince, worn and dog-eared. "It's used," Evan said quickly. "I got it at a second-hand store, but you mentioned once that your dad used to read it to you when you were little, and I saw it and thought, I don't know, I thought you might like to have it." Marissa opened the cover. On the inside page, in Evan's careful handwriting, was a single line. "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." "Evan," she whispered, "it's just a book. It's perfect." She looked up, eyes bright. "I have something for you too." She pulled an envelope from her purse, handed it over. Inside was a simple card and a photograph. The photo showed a small house, Cape Cod style, blue shutters, a porch swing, a yard big enough for a kid to play in. "I don't understand," Evan said. "It's a rental property one of my clients is managing. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 20 minutes from here. The current tenants are moving out in February." She paused. "The market rate is $2,400 a month, but the owner's willing to negotiate for the right tenant, someone stable, responsible, someone with a kid who needs a yard." Evan stared at the photo, at the life it represented, the possibility of space and stability, and something better for Maya. Then he set it down carefully. "I can't accept this. It's not charity. You'd still pay rent. At what? Half price? A quarter? How much did you negotiate, Marissa?" "Does it matter? It's a good house. Maya would love it." "It matters because it's exactly what I was afraid of." Evan's voice was tight, controlled. "This is you trying to fix my life because you can. Because you have resources and I don't. This is the imbalance I told you about. I'm trying to help someone I care about, by making me dependent on you, by putting me in a position where I owe you something I can never repay." "I don't want you to repay me." "Then what do you want?" The question came out sharper than he meant it to. What is this, Marissa? Are we friends? Are we dating? Are you my fairy godmother? Because I can't figure out the rules anymore. Marissa's face crumpled. I just wanted to do something nice. I know you did, but nice isn't enough. Nice doesn't change the fact that we're from different worlds and this. He gestured between them. Whatever this is, it doesn't work. It can't work. Because of money? Because of power. You have it. I don't. And every time you try to help, every time you offer to pay or arrange or fix something, it reminds me that I'm the broke bartender and you're the venture capitalist slumming it with the help. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's how I feel. They sat in silence, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, their breakfast growing cold between them. I should go, Evan said finally. Don't, please. We can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. He stood, threw cash on the table for his half of the bill. Thank you for the thought. Really, but I can't do this. He walked out into the December cold, leaving Marissa alone in the diner with a used book and a photograph of a life they'd never share. The next 3 weeks were the hardest. Evan threw himself into work. Double shifts at the bar, extra freelance projects that kept him up until dawn. Anything to avoid thinking about dark hair and gin and tonics and the way Marissa looked at him like he mattered. Maya noticed. Are you sad, Daddy? She asked one night as he tucked her into bed. Just tired, sweetheart. You're always tired. She studied him with 7-year-old wisdom. But this is different tired, like your heart is tired. He kissed her forehead. Go to sleep, Maya. But she was right. His heart was exhausted. But Marissa didn't come back to the velvet room. Evan told himself that was good, that it was what he wanted. Clean break, no complications. He told himself that every night while he poured drinks and made small talk and pretended he wasn't scanning the room for a face he knew wouldn't be there. 3 weeks turned into 4. And then, on a Thursday night in mid-January, she appeared. But she didn't sit at the bar. She took a booth in the back corner alone, and when their eyes met across the room, she didn't smile. Just lifted her hand in a small wave that felt like a white flag. Evan finished his shift. At closing time, she was still there. Can I buy you a coffee? She asked when he approached. Not as a date? Not as anything. Just as someone who owes you an apology. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. Please. They walked to the all-night diner in silence. When they were seated, Marissa spoke first. I've been thinking about what you said, about power and imbalance and all of it. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. You were right. I was trying to fix your life because I thought that's what caring about someone meant. Solving their problems. Making things easier. But I never asked if that's what you wanted. I just assumed. I could have been less of an asshole about it, Evan said quietly. No, you were honest. That's what I asked for, remember? Real things. They were quiet for a moment. I talked to my therapist about it, Marissa continued. About why I do that. Try to solve everything with money and resources. And we realized it's because that's all I've ever known how to give. My parents showed love by buying things, arranging things, fixing things. Emotional connection was not our strong suit. So when I care about someone, that's my instinct. Throw money at the problem. It's not a bad instinct. It comes from wanting to help. But it's not what you need. What you need is someone who respects your choices, even when those choices are harder than they have to be. Evan met her eyes. What do you need, Marissa? She was quiet for a long moment. I need someone who sees me as more than a bank account or a solution. I need someone who stays even when I mess up. She swallowed hard. I need someone who isn't afraid of me. I'm not afraid of you. Yes, you are. You're afraid of what being with me might cost you, and I get it. But Evan, it's costing us both something to not try. She was right, again. Evan thought about the last month, the hollow feeling in his chest, the way everything felt slightly grayer without their Wednesday meetings to look forward to, the realization that he'd been using their differences as a shield against something that terrified him more than imbalance or inequality ever could, the possibility of actually being happy with someone. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. How to be with someone who lives in your world. I don't know the rules. So we make our own rules. Marissa leaned forward. We talk. We're honest. We stop when things feel wrong and we figure out why. We treat each other like equals even when the world doesn't. And we try. That's all. We just try. What if I can't give you what you're used to? What if you can give me something better? What if you can give me real? Evan looked at this woman who'd pursued him with patience and honesty, who'd let him push her away and came back anyway, who was brave enough to sit across from him and ask for something fragile and terrifying. Okay, he said. Okay? Let's try. On our terms. With our rules. But if at any point this feels like it's not working, for either of us, we promise to be honest about it. No dragging it out, no trying to fix what's broken. Just honesty. Marissa's smile was like light breaking through clouds. Honesty, she agreed. They shook hands across the table, formal and ridiculous and perfect. And somewhere between the bad coffee and the fluorescent lights and the morning truckers starting their shifts, Evan Cole let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The fear didn't disappear. But for the first time in years, hope was louder. The handshake should have felt like an ending. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something vast and uncertain, the kind of moment where you either step forward or spend the rest of your life wondering what if. They left the diner as the city was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling past, streetlights flickering off, the sky turning from black to deep purple. Marissa offered to drive him home, and for once, Evan didn't argue. He was too tired, and the train wouldn't run for another 40 minutes anyway. Her car was exactly what he'd expected. A sleek black sedan that probably cost more than he'd make in 2 years. The leather seats were heated. Classical music played softly from speakers he couldn't see. It smelled like her perfume, something subtle and expensive that he'd never be able to identify. Where to? She asked. He gave her the address, watching her face for any reaction. His neighborhood wasn't dangerous, but it wasn't nice either. The kind of place where chain-link fences separated identical apartment complexes and corner stores had bulletproof glass at the registers. Marissa didn't blink, just programmed the GPS and pulled into traffic. They didn't talk during the 20-minute drive. Evan watched the city change through the window, the downtown high-rises giving way to lower buildings, then to residential streets with bars on windows and laundry hanging from balconies. His exhaustion made everything feel slightly unreal, like he was watching a movie of his own life. When Marissa pulled up in front of his building, she put the car in park but didn't turn it off. "This is me," Evan said, hand on the door handle. "Evan?" He looked back at her. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving this another chance. I know it's not easy." "Neither is what you're doing, slumming it with the broke bartender, remember? That's not what this is." "I know." And he did. That was what made it so terrifying. "Good night, Marissa." "Good night." He climbed out of the car and didn't look back as he walked to his building, but he heard her wait until he was inside before driving away, and something about that small kindness made his chest ache. The apartment was quiet. His mother had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on, some late-night infomercial selling kitchen gadgets. Evan turned it off, draped a blanket over her shoulders, and checked on Maya. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm hanging off the side, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. 7 years old and already growing so fast it terrified him. He stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe, and thought about the house in the photograph. The yard. The space. The possibility of something better. Then he thought about what accepting it would have meant. What it would always mean. He'd made the right choice. He was almost certain. Evan slept for 4 hours, woke up to Maya jumping on his bed, and started the whole routine over again. But something had shifted. The weight he'd been carrying for the past month had lightened just slightly, enough to breathe, enough to hope. Their new rules took shape slowly, testing the boundaries of what they could build together. They met twice a week now, Wednesdays for dinner, Sundays for whatever they felt like doing. Museums. Walks through neighborhoods neither of them knew. Once, memorably, a high school basketball game because Evan mentioned he missed watching sports and couldn't afford cable. Marissa showed up in jeans and a hoodie, bought them both hot dogs from the concession stand, and cheered louder than anyone when a kid made a three-pointer at the buzzer. "I didn't know you were into basketball," Evan said as they walked to her car afterward. "I'm not, but you are." She smiled at him. "I'm into things you care about." It was such a simple statement, but it hit him harder than it should have. When was the last time someone had cared about what he cared about? When had anyone bothered to learn what made him happy instead of just telling him what should? "Next time you pick," he said, "something you like. Something I don't know anything about." Deal. The following Sunday, Marissa took him to an art gallery in the warehouse district. Contemporary installations that Evan didn't understand, a room filled with suspended mirrors, a video loop of waves crashing, a sculpture made entirely of discarded computer parts. But Marissa moved through the space like it was a second language, explaining the concepts and contexts, her whole face animated in a way he'd never seen before. "You really love this," he said, watching her study a painting that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas and called it art. "I do. I minored in art history in college. Thought about working in museums for a while, but my father convinced me business was more practical." She tilted her head. "I think about it sometimes, what that life would have looked like." "Why don't you do it now?" "Because I'm good at what I do, because the money's stable, because starting over is scary." "Scarier than being unhappy?" Marissa looked at him for a long moment. "That's a dangerous question." "You told me to be honest." "I did." She turned back to the painting. "The answer is, I don't know yet." They stood there together, surrounded by art and possibility, and Evan realized this was what he'd been missing in every other relationship he'd ever attempted: the willingness to ask hard questions, the courage to not have all the answers. February brought Valentine's Day, and with it the first real test of their arrangement. Evan was working a double shift at the Velvet Room. The bar was fully booked with couples celebrating, and the owner had offered time and a half to anyone willing to work. He needed the money too badly to say no, even though it meant canceling their Wednesday dinner. "It's fine," Marissa said when he called to tell her. "I understand." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's your job." But when he showed up for his shift that evening, there was a package waiting for him in the break room. Inside was a card and a small box. The card was simple: "Happy Valentine's Day. No obligations, just wanted you to have this." The box contained a watch. Nothing flashy, stainless steel, leather band, classic face. But when Evan turned it over, he saw an engraving on the back: "Time well spent." He should have been angry, should have seen it as another overstep, another gift he couldn't reciprocate. But instead he found himself smiling like an idiot in an empty break room, turning the watch over in his hands and feeling something warm and dangerous bloom in his chest. He wore it the entire shift, and when his break came, he stepped outside into the cold February night and called her. "You didn't have to do that," he said when she answered. "I know. Did you like it?" "I love it, but Marissa, it's not expensive, I promise. I found it at an estate sale last month and thought of you. That's all. No hidden agenda, no strings." The engraving, though, okay, that part was custom, but the sentiment stands. "Every hour I spend with you is time well spent." I wanted you to remember that. Evan closed his eyes, leaning against the brick wall of the bar. "You're making this very hard for me." "Making what hard?" "Not falling for you." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Evan thought maybe he'd said too much, crossed a line they hadn't established yet. Then Marissa laughed, soft and real and a little bit sad. "Good," she said, "because I've already fallen for you, and it would be really inconvenient if this was one-sided." Evan's heart did something complicated in his chest. "We should probably talk about that." "Probably, but not tonight. Tonight you work, and I'll be here thinking about you wearing that watch and being unfairly attractive while mixing drinks." "Marissa." "Go back to work, Evan. We'll talk soon." She hung up, and Evan stood in the cold for another 5 minutes, staring at the watch on his wrist and trying to remember all the reasons this was complicated, all the reasons it shouldn't work. He couldn't think of a single one that mattered more than the sound of her voice saying she'd fallen for him. The talk happened 3 days later over terrible diner coffee and pancakes that arrived swimming in syrup. They'd fallen into a rhythm with this place. Always the same booth, always the same waitress who called them both hun, and never asked questions about why they were there at odd hours looking like they were solving the world's problems. So, Marissa said, pouring sugar into her coffee, we should probably define what this is. This? Us. What we're doing. Because I think we've moved past friendship, but I don't want to assume. Evan set down his fork, met her eyes. What do you want it to be? I want to be with you. Actually, with you. Not just Wednesday dinners and Sunday adventures. I want to call you my boyfriend and have you call me your girlfriend. I want to introduce you to people I know. I want... She stopped, took a breath. I want more than we have now. And what about the things that make this complicated? The money, the different worlds, all of it. We figure it out, together, like we've been doing. She reached across the table, took his hand. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I think we're worth the effort. Don't you? Evan looked down at their joined hands. Hers were soft, manicured, unmarked by the kind of work that left calluses and scars. His were rough, scarred from broken glass and burns, the hands of someone who'd spent his life working with them. They shouldn't fit together, but they did. I'm terrified, he admitted, of messing this up, of disappointing you, of Maya getting attached and then losing you if this doesn't work out. I'm terrified too, of pushing too hard, of not being enough, of you waking up one day and realizing I'm not worth the complications. She squeezed his hand. But I'd rather be terrified together than safe and alone. You're good with words, you know that. I've been practicing that speech for 3 days. Evan laughed, and the tension broke. Okay. Okay? Let's do this, actually do this, but on our terms, with our rules. And the first rule is, if Maya doesn't like you, all bets are off. Marissa paled slightly. You're going to introduce me to your daughter? Eventually, not right away. I want to make sure this is solid first. But if we're doing this for real, she's part of the package, non-negotiable. I've never really spent time around kids. Maya's not that scary. She's 7, not a dragon. 7-year-olds are absolutely dragons. But Marissa was smiling. Okay, when you're ready, I'll meet her, and I promise to bring my A game. Just bring yourself, that's all she needs to see. They finished their pancakes and split the bill, and when they walked out into the early March cold, Evan took Marissa's hand without thinking about it. She laced her fingers through his, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. 2 weeks later, Marissa's father had a heart attack. Evan found out through a text at 2 a.m. At the hospital, it's my dad. Call when you can. He called immediately, stepping out onto his apartment balcony so he wouldn't wake Maya or his mother. Marissa answered on the first ring. Hi. What happened? Massive coronary. They did emergency surgery. He's stable now, but... Her voice cracked. It was close, Evan. Really close. Where are you? Greenwich Hospital in Connecticut. Do you need me to come? It's 2 hours away. That's not what I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Yes, I need you, but I can't ask. You're not asking. I'm offering. I can get my mom to watch Maya. I'll catch a train up as soon as they start running in the morning. Evan, you have work. I'll call in. This is more important. You can't afford to miss a shift. Marissa. He made his voice gentle but firm. Let me be there for you, please. She made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. Okay. Yes. Please come. I'll text you when I'm on my way. He hung up and stood on the balcony for another minute, watching his breath fog in the cold air, and realized this was what being in a relationship actually meant. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, just showing up when someone needed you, even when it was inconvenient, even when it cost you something. He went inside and started making arrangements. The train ride to Greenwich took 2.5 hours, giving Evan plenty of time to second-guess his decision. He'd never met Marissa's parents, didn't know what to expect from the world she came from. The watch on his wrist, the one gift he'd accepted, felt simultaneously too expensive and not expensive enough. Greenwich Hospital was exactly what he expected. New, gleaming, the kind of place where money could buy the best care available. Marissa was in the ICU waiting room, still in the clothes she'd worn to the office the day before, her hair falling out of its ponytail, mascara smudged under her eyes. She looked up when he walked in, and the relief on her face made the trip worth it. "You came." "Of course I came." He sat down next to her, and she immediately leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her and just held on. "My mother's with him now," she said quietly. "He's sedated. They say the surgery went well, but it's still touch and go for the next 48 hours. How are you holding up?" "I don't know. I keep thinking about all the times I was too busy to visit, all the Sunday dinners I skipped because I had work. What if—" She stopped. "What if I don't get more time?" "Hey, don't do that to yourself. He's alive. You're here now. That's what matters." They sat like that for a while, the hospital's fluorescent lights humming overhead, nurses moving past with soft footsteps and quieter voices. Eventually, an older woman emerged from the ICU, tall, elegant, even in distress, with the same dark hair as Marissa threaded with silver. She stopped when she saw them, her gaze moving from Marissa to Evan with barely concealed surprise. "Mom," Marissa said, standing, "this is Evan. Evan, my mother, Catherine Vale." Catherine's handshake was firm, assessing. "Mr. Cole, Marissa mentioned you briefly on the phone." "Ma'am, I'm sorry about your husband." "Thank you, he's resting now. The doctors are optimistic." Her eyes moved between them again. "I wasn't aware Marissa was seeing anyone." "It's fairly recent," Marissa said quickly. "I see. Well, I should get back. The nurses said he might wake up in a few hours." She turned to leave, then paused. "Marissa, when you have a moment, we should discuss the arrangements. Your brother is flying in from London tonight." "I'll find you soon, Mom." Catherine left, and Marissa sank back into her chair with a long exhale. "That went well," Evan said dryly. "She's just stressed. She's not usually so—" Marissa waved a hand. "Actually, no, she's usually like that. Sorry." "Don't apologize. She just found out her husband almost died. She gets a pass." "You're too understanding." "One of my many flaws." Marissa laughed despite everything, and Evan felt like he'd won something important. The next few hours blurred together. More waiting, more bad coffee from vending machines. Marissa's brother arrived, tall, polished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Evan's monthly salary. He shook Evan's hand with the same assessing look his mother had given, clearly trying to figure out what category to put him in. When Marissa's father woke up and was deemed stable enough for brief visits, Evan waited outside while the family went in. He felt out of place in every possible way. His worn jacket, his practical shoes, the fact that he was sitting in a waiting room at a Connecticut hospital instead of being home with his daughter or at work earning money he desperately needed. But when Marissa came back out and took his hand without a word, just needing him there, he knew he'd made the right choice. "You should go," she said around 7 that evening. "You've been here all day." "I can stay." "You have Maya and work tomorrow. I'll be fine. My mom and brother are here." "Marissa, please, Evan. I need you to go take care of your life. I can't handle worrying about you on top of everything else." It wasn't what he wanted to hear, but he understood it. "Call me if anything changes. Anytime, day or night." "I will." He kissed her forehead, a first, but it felt right, and headed back to the train station. On the ride home, he calculated what the day had cost him. A missed shift was at least $200 in tips, probably more on a Friday. The train tickets had been $80 round trip. He'd have to pick up extra freelance work this weekend to make up the difference. But when his phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Thank you for today. I don't know what I would have done without you." He knew he'd do it all over again without hesitation. That was when he realized he wasn't just falling for her anymore. He'd already fallen. The next few weeks were a study in balance and compromise. Marissa's father recovered slowly, keeping her in Connecticut most weekends. Evan juggled extra shifts, freelance work, and taking care of Maya, surviving on 4 hours of sleep and too much coffee. They texted constantly now. Little things throughout the day. "Maya just told me she wants to be a dinosaur scientist when she grows up." "My father complained about the hospital food for 20 minutes. I think he's going to be fine. Missing you. Miss you too." It wasn't the relationship either of them had imagined, but it was theirs, built on honesty and effort and the stubborn refusal to let distance or circumstance pull them apart. When they finally managed a Wednesday dinner in late March, they'd been apart for nearly 3 weeks. Marissa looked exhausted, thinner, pale, with circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. You look terrible, Evan said. Thanks. You really know how to make a girl feel special. I mean it with love. She smiled despite herself. I look how I feel. My father's coming home next week, which is good, but my mother is driving me insane with all the arrangements, and work has been a nightmare because I've been gone so much. When's the last time you slept a full night? Define full night. Marissa, I'm fine. You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground trying to be everything to everyone. He reached across the table, took her hand. What do you need? Actually need? She looked at him for a long moment, then said something he didn't expect. I need to meet Maya. Evan blinked. What? I know we said we'd wait until things were solid, but Evan, we've been together for 3 months. I think about you constantly. She stopped, took a breath. I'm in love with you, and if I'm going to be in your life for real, I need to be part of all of it, including your daughter. His heart was doing that complicated thing again. You love me? Is that really what you're focusing on right now? Kind of a big statement to just drop casually. It's not casual. I've been thinking about it for weeks. I need you to know where I stand, what this means to me. Evan stood up, moved to her side of the booth, and kissed her. Really kissed her, for the first time, tasting coffee and chapstick, and something that was uniquely her. When they broke apart, she was smiling. I love you too, he said, in case that wasn't clear. It was moderately clear. And yes, you can meet Maya. This weekend if you want. Really? Really. Fair warning, though, she's going to interrogate you like a detective. And if she doesn't like you, she'll tell you to your face. 7-year-olds have no filter. I can handle it. We'll see. That Saturday, Marissa showed up at Evan's apartment at 10 in the morning, carrying a bag from a bookstore and wearing jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt that made her look impossibly young. Evan opened the door and for a second just looked at her. This brilliant, complicated woman who'd chosen him despite every rational reason not to. You gonna let me in, or are we doing this in the hallway? She asked. Right, yes, come in. The apartment was small, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, everything slightly worn but clean. His mother had taken Maya to the park to give them time to ease into things, but evidence of a 7-year-old was everywhere. Drawings on the fridge, toys in a bin by the couch, a purple backpack spilling school papers onto the floor. It's not much, Evan started. It's perfect, Marissa said. This is your home. I'm honored to be here. 20 minutes later, they heard footsteps in the hallway. The door burst open and Maya ran in, all energy and wild curls, followed by Evan's mother at a more sedate pace. Daddy! Maya launched herself at Evan, who caught her easily. Hey, troublemaker, did you have fun at the park? We saw 3 dogs and a squirrel, and I went on the swings really high, and Grandma said I could have ice cream later if I'm good. She finally noticed Marissa and went still. Who's that? This is my friend Marissa. Marissa, this is Maya, and my mom, Susan. Susan nodded at Marissa with a warm smile. Nice to finally meet you. I've heard good things. Marissa shook her hand, then crouched down to Maya's level. Hi, Maya. Your dad's told me a lot about you. Maya studied her with the intense focus only children could manage. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Maya, Evan started, but Marissa held up a hand. I am, she said simply. Is that okay? Are you rich? Maya! Evan's face went red, but Marissa laughed. I have a good job and I'm lucky with money, yes. Daddy says rich people are sometimes mean because they don't know what it's like to not have money. Are you mean? Marissa didn't miss a beat. I try not to be, but sometimes I mess up because your dad's right. I don't always understand what it's like for other people. When that happens, I hope someone tells me so I can do better. Maya considered this. Okay, what did you bring me? Maya! This time it was Susan who objected, but again, Marissa waved her off. It's okay. I did bring something. She pulled out the bookstore bag. Your dad mentioned you like dinosaurs, so I brought you this. She handed Maya a beautifully illustrated book about paleontology, designed for kids but clearly high quality. Maya's eyes went wide. This is so cool. Look, Daddy, it has a T-Rex and a Triceratops and... She paused, looked up at Marissa suspiciously. Are you trying to buy me so I'll like you? Evan wanted the floor to open up and swallow him, but Marissa looked at Maya seriously. That's a really smart question. The answer is no. I brought you a book because your dad said you like learning about dinosaurs, and I thought you might enjoy it. If you don't want it, that's okay too. I'll still want to be your friend. Maya stared at her for a long moment, then back at the book. I want it, and I'll be your friend, but I'm watching you. That's fair. And just like that, the tension broke. Maya dragged Marissa over to the couch to read the dinosaur book together, chattering non-stop about fossils and extinction events, and Marissa listened like it was the most fascinating conversation she'd ever had. Evan watched them from the kitchen, helping his mother make sandwiches, and felt something settle in his chest. This could work. They could actually work. She's good with her, Susan said quietly. Yeah, she is. You love her. It wasn't a question. I do. Does she love you back? She says she does. Susan looked at him with the knowing eyes of someone who'd raised him alone, who'd watched him struggle and survive and build a life out of nothing. Then don't sabotage it because you're afraid, baby. Some things are worth the risk. What if I can't give her what she needs? What if you can give her exactly what she needs? Someone who sees her, not her money. Someone who challenges her to be better? Susan squeezed his shoulder. You're enough, Evan. You've always been enough. The question is whether you believe it. In the living room, Maya was showing Marissa her stuffed rabbit, explaining its entire backstory with the seriousness of a documentary narrator. Marissa was nodding along, asking questions, treating a 7-year-old's imagination with the same respect she'd give a business presentation. Evan made himself believe his mother was right. He was enough. They had to be. The next 3 months unfolded like a story Evan had never let himself imagine. Maya adored Marissa, pestering him constantly about when she was coming over again. His mother approved, which mattered more than he wanted to admit, and Marissa fit into his life with an ease that terrified him precisely because it felt so natural. She learned his schedule and worked around it. Started keeping a change of clothes at his apartment for the night she stayed over after Maya was asleep. Figured out how to make his ancient coffee maker work better than he ever had. She and Maya developed their own relationship, separate from him. Saturday morning trips to the science museum, video calls about homework, inside jokes about dinosaurs that Evan didn't fully understand. It should have been perfect. Instead, Evan found himself waiting for the other shoe to drop. The first crack appeared on a Thursday night in late June. Evan was closing the bar when his phone rang. His mother, which was unusual. She never called this late unless something was wrong. Mom, what's going on? It's nothing serious, don't panic, but her voice was tight. Maya had an accident at school today, fell off the monkey bars. I took her to urgent care and they want to do x-rays to make sure her wrist isn't fractured. Evan's stomach dropped. Is she okay? Is she in pain? She's being brave, but yes, it hurts. The doctor said it's probably just a sprain, but they want to be sure. I'm on my way. Which urgent care? The one on Riverside. But Evan, there's a problem. They want payment up front. My insurance card isn't working for some reason, and they're saying it'll be $800 for the x-rays and examination. $800. Evan did the math instantly. He had maybe $300 in his checking account. The rest was already allocated to rent, utilities, groceries. I'll figure it out, he said, mind racing. Just stay with her. Tell her daddy's coming. He hung up and stared at his phone. He could ask his boss for an advance, but he'd already done that twice this year. Could put it on his credit card, but that was nearly maxed out from the last time Maya got sick. His phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. How's your shift going? Evan stared at the message for a long moment. She would help. He knew she would. All he had to do was ask, and she'd transfer the money before he finished explaining the situation. He typed and deleted 3 different messages before finally writing, Fine, slow night, talk tomorrow? Sure. Love you. Love you too. He shoved the phone in his pocket and went to find his boss. 20 minutes and one very awkward conversation later, Evan had borrowed $500 against his next 2 paychecks. Combined with what he had in his account, it would be enough. Barely. Maya's wrist was sprained, not broken. They wrapped it, gave her children's ibuprofen, and sent them home with instructions to ice it and keep it elevated. She fell asleep in the car on the way back, her small head resting against the window, the wrapped wrist cradled in her lap. Evan carried her inside and tucked her into bed, then sat on the couch with his mother and tried not to think about how he'd make rent now. "You should have called Marissa," Susan said quietly. "I handled it." "By going into debt with your boss?" "Evan, she would have helped." "That's exactly why I didn't ask." He rubbed his face, exhausted. "I can't keep running to her every time something goes wrong. What kind of relationship is that? The kind where two people take care of each other." "She already takes care of me in 100 small ways. I can't—" He stopped, searching for words. "I need to handle my own life, Mom. I need to be able to take care of my daughter without someone else's money. Pride is expensive. So is dependence." Susan sighed but didn't push further. She went to bed, and Evan sat alone in the dark, listening to the apartment's familiar sounds, the neighbor's TV through the wall, traffic from the street, the refrigerator's eternal hum. He didn't tell Marissa about Maya's accident until 3 days later, and only because Maya mentioned it herself during one of their video calls. "You didn't tell me she got hurt," Marissa said when she called him afterward, her voice carefully neutral. "It was minor, a sprain. She's fine now." "Evan?" "What?" "Why didn't you call me?" "Because it was my problem to solve." "She's your daughter. That makes her important to me too. I would have wanted to know. I could have helped." "I didn't need help." The silence on the other end was heavy. "Is that what you really think, or is this about the money again?" "It's not about the money." "Then what is it about?" Evan closed his eyes, tried to find a way to explain the tightness in his chest, the way accepting help felt like admitting failure. "It's about being able to stand on my own, about being the kind of father Maya deserves, about not being a charity case to my girlfriend. I have never, not once, treated you like a charity case." "I know. But that doesn't change how it feels when you could solve all my problems with a checkbook, and I can't solve any of yours." "You solve problems I didn't even know I had," Marissa said quietly. "You make me feel seen. You make me feel real. You make me remember that there's more to life than work and money and impressing people I don't even like. That's worth more than anything I could ever buy." "Marissa, no, let me finish. I understand you need to feel independent. I do. But you're taking it to an extreme that's shutting me out of parts of your life. And I don't know how to be with someone who won't let me in when it matters." They ended the call without resolving anything, and Evan felt the foundation of what they'd built start to shift beneath his feet. July brought heat and humidity that made the city feel like a sauna. Evan picked up extra shifts, trying to rebuild his savings after the urgent care bill. He saw less of Marissa, always with a good excuse. He was working, she was traveling for business, their schedules didn't align. The truth was, he was pulling back, and she knew it. "We need to talk," she said when she showed up at his apartment unannounced on a Sunday afternoon. Maya was at a friend's birthday party, giving them rare privacy. "About what?" "About the fact that you've been avoiding me for 3 weeks. About the fact that every time I try to make plans, you have a reason why you can't. About what's really going on." Evan set down the dish he was washing. "I'm not avoiding you." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm trying to keep my head above water. I'm trying to be a good father and a good employee and a good boyfriend, and I'm failing at all 3. "You're not failing. My boss called me in yesterday to talk about my performance issues. Apparently I've been distracted, making mistakes. Maya asked me this morning why I'm always tired, and you—" He turned to face her. "I can feel you getting frustrated with me, with how complicated my life is." "That's not true. Isn't it? Be honest, Marissa. Wouldn't it be easier to be with someone who has their life together? Someone who doesn't have to borrow money from their boss to take their kid to urgent care? Someone who can actually take you on a real date instead of diners and free museums?" Marissa's eyes flashed. "Don't put words in my mouth. I chose you knowing exactly what your life looked like. I chose you because of who you are, not despite your circumstances." "But the circumstances are part of who I am. They're not going away, and eventually you're going to get tired of dealing with them." So you're ending this? Is that what this is? I'm being realistic. You're being scared. She moved closer, her voice urgent. You're looking for reasons to push me away before I can leave you. But I'm not leaving, Evan. I'm right here, trying to be part of your life. And you won't let me. Because letting you in means admitting I can't do this alone. And if I can't do it alone, what kind of man does that make me? It makes you human. Marissa's composure finally cracked. It makes you someone who has people who care about him. Why is that so hard for you to accept? Because everyone leaves eventually. The words came out louder than he meant them to. Maya's mother left. My father left before I was even born. Every girlfriend I've ever had has left when they realized how hard my life is. So forgive me for trying to protect myself and my daughter from going through that again. Marissa stared at him, and he saw the moment his words hit home. The hurt in her eyes, the way she physically stepped back. I'm not them, she said quietly. You say that now. No, I say that because it's true. And the fact that you can't see the difference, that you're putting me in the same category as people who abandoned you, that tells me you don't actually trust me. Maybe you never did. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But I've spent 6 months proving myself to you. 6 months being patient and understanding and working around your rules. And you still think I'm going to wake up one day and decide you're not worth it. She picked up her bag. I can't make you trust me, Evan. That's something you have to choose. But I'm exhausted from trying to convince you that I'm not going anywhere. Marissa, wait. I need some space. We both do. To figure out if this is actually what we want or if we're just holding on to something that's already broken. She left, and Evan stood in his kitchen listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway. The building's front door open and close, the sound of her car starting and driving away. He'd been so busy protecting himself that he hadn't realized he was destroying the exact thing he was trying to protect. The next week was the longest of Evan's life. He and Marissa didn't talk, didn't text. The silence between them felt like a living thing, growing bigger and more impossible to cross with each passing day. Maya noticed immediately. Where's Marissa? She promised she'd help me with my science project. She's busy with work, sweetheart. Is she mad at you? Why would you think that? Maya gave him a look that was far too knowing for 7 years old. Because you look the way I look when I fight with Emma at school, all sad and angry at the same time. We're not fighting. We're just taking a break. That's what Emma said before she decided we weren't friends anymore. Evan pulled her into a hug, feeling like the world's worst father and boyfriend simultaneously. It's going to be okay. He wished he believed it. On Thursday night, his mother cornered him after Maya went to bed. I've been patient, Susan said, but I can't watch you do this to yourself anymore. What happened? Evan told her everything, the fight, the fears, the way he'd pushed Marissa away because he was terrified of needing her too much. Susan listened without interrupting, then said something that made his chest ache. Your father left when I was 3 months pregnant. Did I ever tell you what I was most angry about? Evan shook his head. It wasn't that he left. It was that he made me feel like I wasn't enough. Like if I'd been different, prettier, easier, less complicated, he would have stayed. I spent years believing that. And you know what it got me? Nothing. Because his leaving wasn't about me. It was about him being too afraid to stay. Mom, you're doing the same thing to Marissa that your father did to me. You're leaving before she can leave you. You're making her prove something she's already proven 100 times over. And you're using your fear as a weapon to hurt the person who loves you most. The words hit like a punch to the gut. I don't know how to stop being afraid, Evan said quietly. You don't stop being afraid. You just decide that love is worth being afraid for. Susan took his hand. That girl loves you, really loves you. Not your potential, not who you could be with her money, but who you are right now. And you're throwing it away because you think you don't deserve it. Well, I'm here to tell you, you do. You deserve to be loved, you deserve to be happy, and you deserve to let someone help carry your burdens instead of shouldering everything alone. What if I can't give her what she needs? What if you already are, and you're too stubborn to see it? Evan sat with that question long into the night, replaying every moment with Marissa. The way she looked at him, the way she showed up again and again, even when he made it difficult. The way she loved Maya without hesitation. The way she'd called him out when he was being unfair, but never made him feel small. She'd been choosing him every single day, and he'd been too afraid to choose her back. He called her at midnight, not caring that it was late, that he was probably interrupting something. She answered on the third ring. "Evan? I'm sorry." The words came out rough. "I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. I was scared and I was protecting myself and I pushed you away because I thought it would hurt less than waiting for you to leave. Evan, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "You've spent 6 months showing me who you are. And who you are is someone loyal and patient and brave enough to love someone as broken as me. And instead of trusting that, instead of believing you, I kept waiting for proof that you were like everyone else. But you're not. You're nothing like them. And I've been an idiot." Marissa was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Where are you?" "Home." "Why?" "Stay there. I'm coming over." "It's midnight. You don't have to." "I'm already in my car." She hung up, and Evan spent the next 20 minutes pacing his apartment, rehearsing what he wanted to say, terrified she was coming over to end things properly. When she knocked, he opened the door to find her in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair in a messy bun, no makeup, looking more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. "I'm in love with you," Marissa said suddenly. "I've been in love with you since you said no to me the first time. Since you saw me as a person instead of a bank account. Since you made me feel real for the first time in years. And I need you to know I'm not leaving. Not when things get hard. Not when you're struggling. Not when you're scared. I'm staying. That's what love is. It's staying. Even when I'm impossible? Especially when you're impossible." She stepped closer. "But Evan, you have to let me stay. You have to stop pushing me away every time you feel vulnerable. You have to trust that I mean it when I say I'm here for the long haul. I'm terrified of needing you. I'm terrified of needing you too. Do you think this is easy for me? Loving someone who keeps one foot out the door? Someone who won't let me help when I can? Someone who makes me prove myself over and over?" Her voice cracked. "I'm scared too, but I keep showing up anyway. That's what we do when we love someone. We show up scared." Evan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough that he could feel her heartbeat against his chest. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered into her hair. "Then stop trying to." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in his doorway, letting the fear and the hurt and the misunderstanding start to drain away. "I need to tell you something," Evan said finally, "about Maya's accident, about why I didn't call you." He told her everything. The panic, the calculation, the pride that made him borrow from his boss instead of asking her for help, the shame of not being able to take care of his daughter on his own. Marissa listened, her hand finding his. "Can I tell you what I wish had happened?" she said when he finished. "What?" "I wish you'd called me. Not for the money, though I would have given it in a heartbeat, but just to tell me you were scared, to let me be there with you, even if I couldn't fix it. Because that's what partners do. They sit in the scary moments together. They don't have to solve everything alone. I'm not used to having a partner." "I know, but you have one now, and I need you to start acting like it." "Okay," Evan said. "I'll try. I can't promise I'll be perfect at it, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking." She stayed that night, curled up next to him on his too small couch because they didn't want to risk waking Maya by going to the bedroom. They talked until the sky started to lighten, working through the hurt, establishing new boundaries, being more honest than either of them had been before. "I have money," Marissa said at one point. "That's just a fact. And I want to use it to make our lives easier sometimes. Not to control you or make you dependent, but because that's one way I show love, by taking care of people I care about." "And I need to feel like I contribute," Evan said. "Like I'm not just along for the ride. Like I'm building something, not just receiving it. So we find a middle ground. I stop trying to fix everything with money. You stop refusing help out of pride. We talk about what feels right and what doesn't. We make decisions together." "Together," Evan agreed. As the sun came up, Marissa's phone buzzed with a work email, then another and another. "I have to go," she said reluctantly. "I have a meeting at 9. On a Saturday? Tech startups don't believe in weekends. She kissed him softly. But I'll be back tonight. I'll bring dinner. We can tell Maya we worked things out. She'll be thrilled. She's been worried about us. Smart kid. Evan walked her to the door, then watched from the window as she got in her car and drove away. This time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. That evening, Marissa showed up with Thai food and a determination to make things right with Maya. The 7-year-old was skeptical at first, her small arms crossed as she studied Marissa. Daddy said you guys were taking a break, Maya said, but that you're not breaking up. That's right, Marissa said seriously. We had a disagreement about some grown-up stuff, but we talked about it, and we're okay now. Did you apologize? We both did, because we both made mistakes. Maya considered this, then asked the question that made both adults freeze. Are you going to leave like my mom did? Marissa looked at Evan, then knelt down to Maya's level. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen, she said carefully, but I can promise that I'm choosing to be here. Every single day, I'm choosing your dad, and I'm choosing you. And when things get hard, I'm going to stay and work through them instead of running away, okay? Do you promise? I promise. Maya studied her for another long moment, then nodded and threw her arms around Marissa's neck. Over Maya's shoulder, Marissa's eyes met Evan's, and he saw his own fear reflected back at him, the terror of making promises you desperately want to keep but aren't sure you can. But they were trying, and maybe that's all anyone could ever do. The rest of July passed in a careful reconstruction of trust. They established new rules, better ones. Marissa asked before offering help. Evan practiced accepting it when it made sense. They talked more about money and expectations and the small resentments that could build into relationship-ending walls if left unaddressed. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when Evan's pride flared up, when Marissa's instinct to solve problems with resources clashed with his need for independence. But they were learning the rhythm of each other, the give and take that made love sustainable instead of just passionate. And slowly, carefully, Evan started to believe that maybe this could actually work. That maybe he didn't have to be perfect or financially equal or anything other than honest and present. That maybe he was already enough. August arrived with thunderstorms that rattled windows and turned the streets into rivers. Evan stood at the bar one evening, watching rain sheet down the glass, when Marissa texted him something that made his heart stop. My lease is up in October. Been thinking about what comes next. He stared at the message, reading between the lines. They'd been together 8 months now, good months since their fight in July. She stayed over most weekends, had a drawer at his place. Maya called her by name without the awkward pause that used to precede it. But a lease ending meant decisions, meant defining what they were building. What are you thinking? He texted back. Can we talk about it this weekend, in person? Of course. But the question sat in his chest like a stone for the next 3 days, heavy with possibility and terror in equal measure. Saturday came with clearer skies. Marissa picked him up after his morning shift, drove them to a park by the river where families spread blankets and couples walked hand in hand. They found a bench overlooking the water and for a moment just sat in comfortable silence. My apartment is ridiculous, Marissa said finally. 2,000 square feet for one person, floor-to-ceiling windows I never look out of. A kitchen I barely use because I'm always eating takeout or at your place. Sounds terrible, Evan said lightly, though his pulse was racing. It is. It's lonely. She turned to face him. I've been thinking about what I actually want. Not what makes sense on paper, or what my parents expect, or what looks good. What I want. And what's that? I want to wake up next to you more than twice a week. I want to have breakfast with Maya on Saturday mornings. I want to come home to people instead of empty rooms. She paused. I want to ask if I can move in with you, but I'm terrified you'll say no. Evan's mind went immediately to logistics. His apartment was barely big enough for 3 people already. Where would Marissa's things go? How would they explain it to Maya? What would his mother think? And beneath all of that, the familiar panic. What if this was too much, too fast, too permanent? I can see you spiraling, Marissa said gently. Talk to me. My apartment is tiny. You're used to space and privacy, and I don't care about space. I care about being with you. Maya's there. My mom is there half the time. You'd have no privacy at all. I know what I'm signing up for. What about your stuff, your furniture? You can't fit a 2,000 square foot life into my place. Marissa took his hand. So we get a bigger place. Together. The word hung between them, loaded with implication. I can't afford to split a place that would fit all of us, Evan said quietly. Not anything close to what you're used to. What if we don't split it 50-50? What if we each pay what we can afford? You cover what you've been paying now, maybe a little more. I cover the rest. We build something together that works for both of us. That's not equal. Equal doesn't mean identical, Evan. It means fair. It means both of us contributing what we can to build a life that makes us happy. She squeezed his hand. I make more money than you. That's just a fact. But you contribute in dozens of ways I can't. You cook. You're amazing with Maya. You fix things. You make our life run. Why is my financial contribution worth less than all of that? It's not worth less. It's just... He struggled for words. What if you resent me for not carrying my weight financially? What if you resent me for making more money? We can what if ourselves to death, or we can trust that we'll talk about it if problems come up, like we've been doing. Evan looked out at the river, watching sunlight dance on the water. Everything she said made sense, but sense and fear didn't always align. I need to think about it, he said finally, and I need to talk to Maya. She'd be part of this decision too. Of course. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know where my head is. They stayed at the park for another hour, talking about smaller things, easier things, but the question sat between them like a third presence, impossible to ignore. That night, after Maya was asleep, Evan sat with his mother in the living room. Marissa wants to move in, he said without preamble. She wants us to get a place together, something bigger. Susan set down her book. And you're terrified. Wouldn't you be? Probably. But I'd also be excited. Evan, you love this woman. She loves you and Maya. Why are you looking for reasons to say no? Because what if it doesn't work? What if we move in together, and 6 months from now she realizes she made a mistake? Then I've uprooted Maya's life for nothing. Or what if it does work? What if you build something beautiful together? You can't live your whole life protecting yourself from potential pain. Sometimes you have to take the risk. When did you get so wise? Susan smiled. Around the same time I realized my son inherited my stubborn streak and my fear of happiness. She reached over and patted his knee. Talk to Maya. See how she feels. But Evan, don't let fear make this decision for you. You've already lost too much to fear. The next morning, Evan made Mickey Mouse pancakes, Maya's favorite, and waited until she'd eaten 3 before broaching the subject. Can I ask you something, sweetheart? Maya looked up, syrup on her chin. Is this a serious talk? Because you only make the mouse pancakes when it's serious. He laughed despite his nerves. When did you get so perceptive? I'm in 2nd grade now, Daddy. I know things. Clearly. He took a breath. How would you feel if Marissa moved in with us? Not here, but in a new place. Somewhere bigger, where we'd all live together. Maya's eyes went wide. Like a real family. We're already a real family, but yes, like that. She was quiet for a moment, thinking in that deliberate way she had. Would I have to share my room? No, you'd have your own room. Would Marissa be there every day? Yes. Even when she's working. She'd still go to work, but she'd come home to us every night. Maya set down her fork, her expression serious. Daddy, do you love Marissa? The question was so direct it took his breath away. Yes, very much. Does she love us? She does. Then why are you asking me? Of course I want her to live with us. She's the best. Maya picked up her fork again, apparently considering the matter settled. Can I have a purple room in the new place? Evan felt something loosen in his chest. We'll see what we can do. That's what you always say when the answer is yes, but you want me to think you're being reasonable. You really do know things. Maya grinned, and Evan realized his daughter had already made the leap he was still terrified to take. She'd already accepted Marissa as permanent, as family, as someone worth rearranging their lives for. Maybe it was time he did the same. He called Marissa that afternoon. Okay. Okay? Let's do it. Let's find a place together. The sound she made might have been a laugh or a sob or both. Really? Really? But we do this right. We set boundaries. We're honest about money. And if at any point it's not working, we talk about it instead of letting it fester. I can do that. And Maya wants a purple room. That's non-negotiable, I assume. Completely. Then I guess we're finding a place with a room we can paint purple. They spent the next 6 weeks looking at apartments and small houses, navigating the complicated reality of their different expectations. Marissa kept suggesting places that made Evan's stomach clench at the price. He kept suggesting places she'd diplomatically call cozy when she meant too small. Finally, they found a compromise, a 3-bedroom townhouse in a neighborhood halfway between the financial district and Evan's current place. It had a small yard, an updated kitchen, and enough space for all of them without feeling excessive. The rent was more than Evan had ever imagined paying, but when they broke it down according to their incomes, his portion was manageable. Barely, but manageable. "Are you sure about this?" he asked Marissa as they stood in the empty living room, their voices echoing off bare walls. "I'm sure. Are you?" He looked around, imagining Maya running through these rooms, imagining mornings in that kitchen, imagining a life that felt more like building something instead of just surviving day to day. "Yeah," he said, "I'm sure." They signed the lease on a gray September afternoon, Evan's hand shaking slightly as he wrote his name. This was real. They were doing this. Moving day was chaos. Marissa's things arrived in a truck that seemed absurdly large. Designer furniture, abstract art, enough kitchen equipment for a restaurant. Evan's things fit in his car and his mother's SUV, secondhand furniture, Maya's toys, boxes of books and memories. "This is never going to fit," Evan said, staring at the pile of belongings accumulating in the living room. "It'll fit. We'll make it work." Marissa was already organizing, deciding what went where with the confidence of someone used to managing complicated logistics. Maya ran through the space, claiming her purple room with a squeal of delight, already making plans for where her bed would go, where she'd put her dinosaur collection, how she'd arrange her stuffed animals. By midnight, they'd made enough progress that the place looked almost livable. Boxes still lined the walls, furniture sat at odd angles, but there were sheets on the beds and food in the refrigerator. Evan collapsed on the couch, Marissa's couch, expensive and comfortable, and let himself feel the weight of what they'd done. "Hey," Marissa said, sitting next to him. "We did it." "We did? How are you feeling?" Terrified, excited, exhausted, all of it at once. She leaned against him, and they sat in the quiet of their new home, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a different neighborhood, a different life. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For taking this chance. For trusting me. For letting me be part of this. Thank you for being patient with me. For not giving up when I was being impossible. We're both impossible. That's why it works." The first few weeks in the new place were an adjustment. Evan had to learn new routes to work, new grocery stores, new rhythms. Maya struggled with being farther from her school, even though the bus picked her up right outside. His mother approved but worried, constantly asking if he was sure he could handle the increased rent. But slowly, the townhouse became home. Marissa's art on the walls next to Maya's drawings, his battered coffee maker on the counter next to her fancy espresso machine. Their clothes mixed together in the closet. 3 toothbrushes in the bathroom instead of 2. The real test came 6 weeks in, when Evan's car died completely. Not a repair situation, not something that could be fixed for a few $100s. Dead, according to the mechanic, who looked genuinely apologetic when he delivered the news. Evan stood in the garage staring at the car he'd driven for 9 years and felt the familiar panic rise. He couldn't afford a new car, could barely afford a used car. The bus routes from their new place were complicated. He'd have to leave earlier for work, get home later, see Maya less. He called Marissa from the garage, his voice tight. "My car's dead." Dead? Completely. The mechanic said it's not worth fixing. Something about the transmission and the engine and a bunch of other things I didn't understand. "Okay, we'll figure it out." "Marissa, I can't afford a new car right now. The move tapped me out. I've got maybe $2,000 in savings and that needs to stay for emergencies with Maya. So we'll get you a car together." "I can't let you buy me a car." "I'm not buying you a car. We're buying our household a car." We live together now. Your transportation affects both of us. If you can't get to work, you can't contribute to rent. So this is an investment in our household. That's some creative logic. It's practical logic. Evan, we're partners. Stop trying to do everything alone. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly. This was the moment. The test of everything they'd talked about. Could he accept help without feeling like he was failing? Could he let her contribute without resenting it? Okay, he said finally, but we set a budget, something reasonable, and I pay what I can toward it. Deal. They found a reliable used sedan for $8,000. Evan contributed his $2,000 in savings, hating every second of it but doing it anyway. Marissa covered the rest and didn't make it into a big deal, didn't hold it over him, just handled the paperwork and moved on. The night they brought the car home, Evan sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, and tried to process how he felt about it. Marissa knocked on the window and he rolled it down. "You okay?" she asked. "Honestly, I don't know. Part of me feels grateful. Part of me feels like I failed at being a provider, and part of me is just relieved I can get to work tomorrow." You're allowed to feel all of those things at once. Feelings don't have to make sense. When did you get so emotionally intelligent? Therapy, lots of therapy. She leaned through the window and kissed him. For what it's worth, I don't see this as you failing. I see it as us solving a problem together. That's what people do when they love each other. I'm still getting used to that. I know, but you're getting better at it. She was right. He was getting better at it. At accepting help, at asking for support, at believing that needing someone didn't make him weak. It was slow progress, but it was progress. October brought Maya's 8th birthday, and with it, Evan's determination to do something special. Not expensive, but meaningful. He planned a scavenger hunt through the city, each clue leading to a place that mattered to them. The museum where she and Marissa went every other week, the park where they'd celebrated her 7th birthday, the ice cream shop that gave her free sprinkles because she made the owner laugh. Marissa helped him set it up, hiding clues and arranging surprises at each location. They worked together seamlessly now, anticipating each other's thoughts, dividing tasks without discussion. "You're really good at this," Marissa said as they hid the final clue. "At what?" "Being a dad. Making her feel special without spending a fortune. Creating memories instead of just buying things. I had a good teacher. My mom did the same thing when I was growing up. We didn't have money for big presents, but she always made me feel celebrated. I want to learn how to do that. How to show love without defaulting to my checkbook." Evan pulled her close. "You're already learning. Look at you, hiding clues in a park at 7 in the morning instead of just buying her the biggest present in the store." "I did also buy her a present." "Of course you did. But a reasonable present, a telescope, because she mentioned wanting to look at stars." "That's perfect." "Really?" "Really. You listened to what she wanted and you got her something that feeds her curiosity." "That's exactly right." Marissa's smile was bright enough to rival the sunrise. The scavenger hunt was a success. Maya ran from location to location with infectious enthusiasm, dragging both adults along, reading each clue with the seriousness of a detective solving a case. The final clue led her back to the townhouse, where Susan was waiting with a homemade cake and the telescope wrapped in purple paper. "This is the best birthday ever," Maya announced, throwing her arms around Evan and then Marissa. "Can we look at stars tonight?" "Absolutely," Marissa said. That evening, the three of them sat in the small backyard, taking turns peering through the telescope at constellations. Marissa had looked up on her phone. Maya chattered about space and planets and whether there were aliens somewhere looking back at them. Evan watched them. His daughter and the woman he loved, their heads bent together over the telescope, and felt something settle deep in his chest. This was what he'd been afraid of, this ordinary, beautiful moment, this feeling of contentment that felt too good to be real, too perfect to last. But it was real, and it was lasting. And maybe it was time to stop waiting for it to fall apart. Later, after Maya was asleep and they were getting ready for bed, Marissa said something that surprised him. "I've been thinking about my job." "What about it?" "I don't think I want to do it anymore. The venture capital thing. I'm good at it, but it doesn't make me happy. It hasn't for a while." "What would make you happy?" I don't know. Maybe something in museums, maybe teaching, maybe something I haven't thought of yet. She turned to face him. Is that crazy? To walk away from a job that pays well because it doesn't fulfill me? It's not crazy. It's brave. I'm scared though. What if I make less money? What if I can't find something else? What if I'm just being ungrateful? You're allowed to want more from life than a paycheck, and for what it's worth, I'll support whatever you decide. We'll figure out the money stuff. We always do. Marissa looked at him with something like wonder. A year ago, you would have panicked at the idea of me making less money. What changed? I changed. You changed me. You taught me that there's more to life than just surviving, that sometimes you have to take risks to actually live. That's very profound for 10 o'clock at night. I'm a bartender. We're naturally profound at night. She laughed and kissed him, and they fell into bed together, their lives intertwined in ways both terrifying and perfect. November arrived with the first frost. Evan picked up extra holiday shifts at the bar, and Marissa started seriously researching career changes, reaching out to museum contacts, taking online classes in art history and education. They fell into new rhythms, morning coffee together while Maya got ready for school, text check-ins during the day, evening routines where they divided tasks without thinking about it. Marissa helped Maya with homework while Evan cooked dinner. Evan handled laundry and cleaning while Marissa paid bills and managed their finances. It wasn't perfect. They still fought sometimes about money, about whose turn it was to do dishes, about how to handle Maya's increasing requests for expensive things. But they'd learned how to fight, to raise issues before they festered, to listen instead of just defending, to apologize when they were wrong. One Friday night in late November, Evan came home from his shift to find Marissa sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of her, a strange expression on her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong. The opposite, actually." She held up an envelope. "I got accepted into a museum studies graduate program. Part-time. I could do it while working." "Marissa, that's amazing. It's also expensive, like very expensive. And it would mean I'd have less time, less flexibility, and I'd probably need to cut back my hours at work eventually, which means less income. And..." She stopped, took a breath. "I'm spiraling. Talk me down." Evan sat across from her, took her hands. "Do you want to do this? Really want to?" "More than I've wanted anything professionally in years." "Then you should do it." "But the money, we'll figure it out. We always do. You supported me through my car dying. Let me support you through this. Let us support each other. When did you become the calm one?" "I'm faking it. Inside, I'm terrified of how we'll make this work financially, but I'm more terrified of you giving up on something you want because of money. We'll cut back somewhere else. I'll pick up more shifts. We'll be creative." Marissa's eyes filled with tears. "I love you so much." "I love you too. Now stop crying and tell me more about this program." She did, her whole face lighting up as she described the classes, the internship opportunities, the possibility of actually working in a field she was passionate about. And Evan realized he'd spend the rest of his life working extra shifts if it meant seeing her look that happy. They were in this together, really, truly together. Not just two people coexisting, but partners building something that mattered more than money or status or any of the things that had seemed so important at the beginning. They were building a life. And it was messy and complicated and absolutely worth every risk they'd taken to get here. December marked a year since that first fight in the diner, when Evan had pushed Marissa away over a photograph of a house and his own stubborn pride. Now they stood in their kitchen on a Saturday morning, Marissa studying for her first graduate class while Evan made pancakes, and the contrast felt like a lifetime of growth compressed into 12 months. Maya burst into the room, already talking before she was fully through the doorway. "Can I invite Emma to my recital next week? And her parents? And also, can we get pizza after because Emma's parents always get pizza after things, and I want to be like them?" Evan flipped a pancake, considering. Maya's winter recital was at her school, a casual event where kids performed songs they'd learned in music class. It wasn't fancy, but it mattered to her. "Pizza sounds good to me," he said. "Marissa?" "I'm in for pizza. The more the merrier." Maya beamed and ran off to call Emma, and Marissa looked up from her textbook with a smile. "Remember when you were terrified to introduce me to her? I remember thinking she'd see right through me, that she'd know I had no idea what I was doing. She did know. She just didn't care. Marissa stood and wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. Kids are better at seeing what matters than adults are. Deep thoughts for 9 in the morning. I have a test Monday. My brain is currently 70% art history facts and 30% anxiety. You're going to do great. You have to say that. You're contractually obligated as my boyfriend. Evan turned in her arms, kissed her forehead. I'd say it even if I wasn't. You've been working harder than anyone I know. You've got this. She held him for a moment longer, then returned to her studying. These small moments of domesticity had become Evan's favorite part of their life together. Nothing dramatic or grand, just the quiet comfort of being in the same space, supporting each other through ordinary days. The following week brought Maya's recital and a surprise that would change everything. The school auditorium was packed with parents and grandparents armed with phones and cameras. Evan sat between Marissa and his mother, watching second graders file onto the stage in their dress clothes, Maya among them in the purple dress Marissa had taken her to buy. She looks so grown up, Susan whispered. Don't, Evan said. I'm already emotional enough. The performance was exactly what you'd expect from 8-year-olds, off-key, enthusiastic, with one kid who forgot the words entirely and just moved his mouth. Maya sang her heart out, her eyes scanning the audience until she found them, and then her smile went supernova. Afterward, during the reception in the cafeteria, Emma's parents introduced themselves. Mark and Jennifer Chen, friendly and warm, immediately putting everyone at ease. Maya talks about you constantly, Jennifer said to Marissa. The famous Marissa who knows everything about dinosaurs. Marissa laughed. I know significantly less than Maya does at this point. She's teaching me. As they chatted, Mark pulled Evan aside slightly. So I have to ask, are you the Evan who works at the Velvet Room? Guilty. Have you been in? A few times for client dinners. You make a fantastic old-fashioned. Mark paused. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Our company is looking for someone to manage our corporate events. Planning, coordinating with vendors, handling logistics. It's Monday through Friday, benefits, decent salary. I know it's not bartending, but I thought of you when the position opened up. You have the customer service skills, the organization, the attention to detail. Evan's heart started racing. I don't have event planning experience. But you have hospitality experience, which is 80% of the job. The rest we can train. If you're interested, I can send you the details. I'm interested, definitely interested. They exchanged information, and Evan returned to the group trying to process what just happened. A Monday through Friday job, benefits. No more late nights, no more weekend shifts, no more coming home at 2 in the morning smelling like gin and exhaustion. He caught Marissa's eye across the conversation, and she tilted her head in question. He shook his head slightly, later, and she nodded, understanding. At pizza afterward, Maya held court at one end of the table with Emma, and the adults clustered at the other. Evan told Marissa about Mark's offer, keeping his voice low. That's amazing, she said immediately. It might not be. I don't know what it pays yet. It might be less than what I make now with tips. But you'd have benefits. Health insurance for you and Maya. Paid time off. A schedule that doesn't mean working until midnight. I know. I'm trying not to get my hopes up until I know more. Marissa squeezed his hand under the table. Get your hopes up. You deserve this. The job details arrived Monday morning. The salary was less than Evan made bartending when tips were good, but not by much. And the benefits package was substantial. Health insurance, dental, vision, 2 weeks vacation, sick days. Things he'd never had in his adult life. He stared at the email for 20 minutes before calling Mark back. The interview process was surprisingly smooth. They liked his customer service background, his ability to work under pressure, his organizational skills developed from juggling 2 jobs and single parenthood. Within 2 weeks, they offered him the position starting in January. Evan accepted and gave notice at the Velvet Room, where his boss clapped him on the back and told him it was about time he got a real job with real hours. You'll miss this place, though, Tony said. The excitement, the people. I'll miss the people. The excitement can retire early. His last shift was December 30th, New Year's Eve, and it was chaos, drunk partygoers, elaborate cocktails, tips that ranged from generous to insulting. But at the end of the night, when Evan wiped down the bar for the final time and looked around at the space that had sustained him for years, he felt grateful instead of sad. This job had fed his daughter, had given him flexibility when he needed it, had been there when nothing else was. But it was time to move forward. Marissa picked him up at 2 in the morning, as she had so many times before. "How does it feel?" she asked as he got in the car. "Like closing a chapter, a long, exhausting chapter. Ready for the next one?" "More than ready." She drove them home through empty streets, the city quiet in that way it only got in the deepest hours. When they pulled up to the townhouse, Evan saw lights on in the living room. "Did we leave those on?" he asked. "I don't think so." They went inside to find Maya and Susan waiting up. A banner hung across the wall that read, "Congratulations, Daddy," in Maya's handwriting, slightly crooked but perfect. "We know it's late," Susan said, "but we wanted to celebrate your last night, the beginning of your new job." Maya ran to him, and Evan picked her up even though she was getting too big for it, buried his face in her hair, and let himself feel the full weight of this moment. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd sacrificed, it was all for this. For her to have a better life, for them to have stability, for him to finally believe he could provide without destroying himself in the process. "I'm proud of you, Daddy," Maya whispered. "I love you, troublemaker." They stayed up until 3 eating grocery store cake and talking about what the new schedule would mean. Evan could take Maya to school in the mornings, could be home for dinner every night, could coach her soccer team if she wanted to play, could actually have weekends. "What are you going to do with all that free time?" Susan teased. Evan looked at Marissa, who was laughing at something Maya said, her hair falling out of its ponytail, wearing sweatpants and one of his old t-shirts, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd walked into the Velvet Room 18 months ago. "I have some ideas," he said. The new year brought new routines. Evan started his job and loved it immediately, the challenge of coordinating events, working with vendors, solving problems that didn't involve drunk customers or broken glasses. His coworkers were friendly, his boss was reasonable, and he came home each day tired but not exhausted, satisfied but not depleted. Marissa thrived in her graduate program, her whole demeanor changing as she studied subjects she actually cared about. She'd cut her hours at work to part-time, taking a significant pay cut, but the relief on her face made it clear she'd made the right choice. They adjusted their budget accordingly, cut back on eating out, found cheaper grocery stores, got creative with entertainment. It was tighter than when Marissa was working full-time, but they made it work. "We should talk about something," Marissa said one evening in February, almost exactly 2 years since that first night at the bar. Evan looked up from the dishes. "That's never a good opening." "It's not bad, just important." She took a breath. "My trust fund releases when I'm 26, which is in 3 months. Evan hadn't known she had a trust fund, though in retrospect it made sense. "Okay?" "It's substantial, like enough that I could not work for years if I didn't want to. Enough that we could buy a house, not just rent. Enough that money would stop being something we worry about." "That's good, right?" "It is. But I need you to know I don't want it to change us. I don't want you to feel like I'm suddenly in a different category, like we're back to that imbalance that terrified you at the beginning." Evan dried his hands, came to sit across from her at the table. "Can I tell you something? A year ago, this conversation would have sent me into a panic spiral. I would have started planning my exit strategy, convinced that you'd leave me or that I couldn't possibly measure up or that money would poison everything we built. And now? Now I trust you. I trust us. I know that you having money doesn't change who you are or what we mean to each other. And I know that if problems come up, we'll talk about them instead of letting them fester." He took her hand. "I'm not afraid of your trust fund, Marissa. I'm grateful you're sharing this part of your life with me." She looked at him with something like wonder. "You've come so far." "We both have. That's kind of the point, isn't it?" She nodded, and they sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she said, "I want to use some of it for something specific. I want to buy out your student loans." "Marissa, hear me out. You have $40,000 in loans from the 2 years of college you did finish. You're paying $300 a month on them, which is money we could use for other things. Let me pay them off. Consider it an investment in our household, just like the car." That's different. The car was an emergency. And this is an opportunity. An opportunity for you to finish your degree without the financial pressure. An opportunity for you to maybe, eventually, become that teacher you always wanted to be. Evan's throat tightened. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. And before you spiral, think about it practically. If you finish your degree, you could get an even better job eventually, could provide more for Maya, for us. This isn't charity. It's an investment in your future, which is also my future now. You've really thought this through? I've been thinking about it since I found out when the trust fund releases. I want to use this money for things that matter, and you matter more than anything. Evan stood, walked to the window, stared out at their small yard where spring was just starting to show itself in green shoots pushing through winter-dead grass. Everything in him still wanted to say no, to protect his pride, to prove he could do it alone. But that wasn't love. That wasn't partnership. That was fear masquerading as strength. Okay, he said, turning back to her. But on one condition. What's that? When I finish my degree, when I become a teacher, I want to set aside part of my salary for Maya's college fund. Something that's just for me, that I build myself, so I can give her what my mom couldn't give me. Marissa's eyes filled with tears. Deal. And we make a plan together for the rest of the money. Not just you deciding what to do with it. We decide as partners. I can do that. They shook hands across the table, formal and ridiculous and absolutely them, and Evan felt another piece of his armor fall away. He was letting her in completely now, not with reservations or conditions or escape routes, just trust. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Spring brought change with the warming weather. Evan enrolled in online classes to finish his degree, studying during lunch breaks and after Maya went to bed. Marissa's graduate program intensified, but she was radiant with purpose in a way he'd never seen before. Maya thrived with the new stability, her grades improving, her confidence growing. They started talking about the future more concretely, about buying a house eventually, maybe something with a bigger yard, about whether they wanted more kids, a conversation that terrified Evan but felt important to have, about what their life could look like if they kept choosing each other. In May, on a Sunday afternoon when Maya was at a friend's house and they had the townhouse to themselves, Evan took Marissa to the park by the river where she'd first asked to move in together. "Why are we here?" she asked, though she was smiling. "Because this is where you took a risk on us, where you asked for more even though you knew I might say no. And I've been thinking about risks and trust and all the things we've built together." "Evan, let me finish." He took both her hands, his heart hammering. "When you walked into the velvet room that first night, I saw you as everything I couldn't have, everything I couldn't be. You were confident and successful and from a world so different from mine that it felt like we were different species." "That's romantic." "I'm getting there," he smiled. "But you were also the first person in years who saw me as more than just a bartender or a single dad or someone to feel sorry for. You saw potential, you saw worth, and you kept seeing it even when I tried to push you away, even when I made it hard, even when fear made me cruel." Marissa's eyes were bright with tears. "You were never cruel. I was scared, and I let that fear almost cost me the best thing that ever happened to me." He took a breath. "I don't have a ring right now because I wanted to ask you first if this is what you want, if I'm what you want. Not the future version of me who might have more money or a better job or less baggage. The me that exists right now, with a kid in student loan debt and a history of pushing people away when I get scared. Evan, I'm asking if you'll marry me, if you'll choose me, officially and permanently, if you'll let me spend the rest of my life choosing you back." Marissa was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. "You idiot! Of course I'll marry you. I've been waiting for you to ask for months." "Really?" "Really. I would have asked you myself eventually, but I knew you needed to be the one to take this step, to show yourself you were ready." "I'm ready. I'm so ready." He pulled her into a kiss, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, laughing and crying at the same time. When they broke apart, she said, "We should probably tell Maya before anyone else." "Already did. I asked her permission last week." "You asked an 8-year-old for permission to propose to me?" "She's the other important woman in my life." I needed to make sure she was on board. He grinned. She said yes, but only if she gets to be in the wedding and wear a purple dress. Obviously, she can wear a purple dress. It's non-negotiable at this point. They sat on the bench overlooking the water, planning a future that felt real and possible and absolutely theirs. No grand gestures, no expensive rings, just two people who'd found each other against all odds and decided that love was worth the fear. The engagement announcement was low-key, phone calls to family, a casual mention to friends, Maya telling everyone at school with the enthusiasm of someone sharing earth-shattering news. Susan cried happy tears and told Evan she knew all along. Marissa's parents were surprised but gracious, inviting them to Connecticut for a weekend to celebrate. That visit was its own test. Marissa's childhood home was exactly what Evan expected. Massive, immaculate, filled with art and antiques and the quiet hum of old money. Catherine and Richard Vale were polite but reserved, clearly trying to understand what their daughter saw in this man from such a different background. Over dinner, Richard asked about Evan's plans. Marissa mentioned you are finishing your degree. What do you intend to do with it? Teach high school math. It's what I wanted to do before Maya came along. Teaching is noble work, though not particularly lucrative. Dad, Marissa started, but Evan held up a hand. You're right, it's not. But it's meaningful. And I've learned that meaningful matters more than lucrative, at least to me. Richard studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I can respect that. My father wanted me to be a doctor. I chose business instead because it made me happy. Sometimes the path that makes sense isn't the path that's right. It was the closest thing to approval Evan had gotten from either of Marissa's parents, and he'd take it. That night, lying in the guest room of the house where Marissa grew up, she turned to him in the dark. Thank you for being yourself with them, not trying to impress them or be someone you're not. I'm done pretending to be anything other than who I am. It's exhausting. I love who you are. I love who you are too. Even when your parents look at me like I'm a fascinating science experiment. She laughed. They're warming up to you. Give them time. I've got nothing but time. I'm marrying you, remember? How could I forget? Maya reminds me daily that she needs to approve the purple dress. They planned the wedding for September, keeping it small and simple. A ceremony in the park where Evan proposed, followed by dinner at their favorite diner because it felt right to celebrate where they'd shared so many important conversations. Susan helped Maya pick out the perfect purple dress. Marissa's parents attended but didn't try to take over the planning. Evan's co-workers from his new job came, along with a few regulars from the Velvet Room who'd become friends over the years. Emma and her family. Marissa's graduate school cohort. It wasn't fancy. The flowers were from a local grocery store. The cake was homemade by Susan. Evan wore a suit he'd bought on sale, and Marissa wore a simple white dress that cost less than her regular work clothes used to. But when they stood in front of the small gathering, holding hands and making promises, it was perfect. I promise to choose you, Evan said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to trust you, to let you in, to stop running when I get scared. I promise to build a life with you that's based on honesty and partnership and the kind of love that doesn't quit. Marissa's voice was thick with tears. I promise to see you, really see you, always, to support your dreams even when they're different from mine. To be patient when you need space and present when you need support. I promise to love all of you, the strong parts and the scared parts and everything in between. I promise to stay. They exchanged rings, simple bands they'd picked out together, nothing flashy, just symbols of commitment. And when the officiant said they could kiss, Maya cheered so loud it made everyone laugh. The dinner afterward was exactly what Evan had hoped for. Mismatched chairs around pushed-together tables, terrible diner coffee, and conversation that flowed easily. Maya sat between them, beaming in her purple dress, already planning what she'd tell her friends at school on Monday. This is nice, Marissa said quietly, leaning against Evan's shoulder. Exactly right. No regrets about the fancy wedding your parents probably wanted to throw? Not even a little. This is us, real and imperfect, and absolutely ours. As the evening wound down and people started leaving, Mark Chen pulled Evan aside. Congratulations, man. You two are good together. Thanks. And thank you for the job opportunity. I don't think I ever properly expressed how much it changed my life. You've earned it. You're great at what you do. Mark paused. Actually, there's a promotion coming up in a few months. Event planning director. Bigger salary, more responsibility. I think you should apply. I've only been there 8 months. And you've already proven yourself. Just think about it. Evan promised he would, and as he watched Mark rejoin his family, he felt the last piece of his old fear dissolve. He wasn't an imposter in his new life. He belonged here, had earned his place through work and growth and the courage to keep showing up. The honeymoon was a weekend at a cabin upstate, just the two of them while Susan watched Maya. They hiked, read books, talked about everything and nothing. On their last night, sitting on the cabin's porch watching stars, Marissa brought up something they'd been dancing around for months. What do you think about having another kid? Evan's first instinct was panic, the cost, the stress, the fear of dividing his attention. But he made himself sit with the question instead of reacting to it. Honestly, he said finally, the idea terrifies me. But also, I think I'd like Maya to have a sibling, to not be alone like I was. We don't have to decide now. We have time. But you want to? I think so, eventually, when we're ready. She took his hand. No pressure, just something to think about. I'll think about it, really think about it, not just panic about it. That's all I ask. They returned home to find Maya had drawn them a welcome home banner and made a list of 17 things that happened while they were gone, ranking them from most important to least. Most important is that Grandma let me stay up past bedtime, Maya announced. Least important is that the neighbor's cat came in our yard. Those both seem pretty important, Evan said, pulling her into a hug. I know. That's why I put them on the list. Life settled into its new normal. Evan excelled at his job and applied for the director position, getting it with a salary increase that finally put him solidly in middle-class territory. Marissa finished her first year of graduate school with honors and started an internship at a local museum. Maya thrived in 3rd grade, developing a passion for science that had her constantly conducting experiments in the kitchen. They bought a house the following spring, using Marissa's trust fund for the down payment, but choosing something modest and manageable, something they could afford together even without her family money. 3 bedrooms, a real yard, a neighborhood with good schools. Maya got her purple room. They got a guest room for Susan. The 3rd bedroom they left empty, a question mark for the future. On the anniversary of their first meeting, that night in the velvet room when Marissa had walked in and Evan had said no, they went back to the bar for old times' sake. Tony was still there, still making drinks, and he lit up when he saw them. The ones who got away. What are you drinking? Gin and tonic, Marissa said. Whiskey neat, Evan added. Tony made their drinks and refused to let them pay. On the house for the couple who proved me wrong. I always said workplace romances were a bad idea. Technically, I wasn't working here when we got together, Marissa pointed out. Close enough. Tony studied them. You two look happy, really happy. We are, Evan said, taking Marissa's hand. They sat at the bar where it all started, sipping their drinks and watching the Thursday night crowd, and Evan marveled at how far they'd come. From that first refusal to this moment of quiet contentment. From fear and suspicion to trust and partnership. Do you ever think about how close we came to not working out? Marissa asked. All the time? Every time I almost pushed you away? Every time my pride almost cost us everything? I almost gave up a few times too. After that fight in July, I seriously considered just walking away, protecting myself from more hurt. What made you stay? Maya, actually. She asked me when I was coming back, and I realized I couldn't just disappear from her life. And if I was staying for her, I might as well fight for you too. Marissa smiled. Plus, I'd already fallen in love with you. Seemed wasteful to throw that away. Very practical of you. I'm a practical person. You're the best person. They finished their drinks and drove home, where Susan was watching Maya and a movie was playing too loud in the living room. Their house, their family, their beautifully imperfect life. Later, after Maya was asleep and Susan had gone home and they were getting ready for bed, Evan pulled Marissa close. I have something to tell you, he said. Should I be worried? The opposite. I've been thinking about what you said. about another kid. And I think I'm ready. Not right this second, but soon. I want to build that part of our family together. Marissa's smile was incandescent. Really? Really? I'm not afraid anymore. Well, I'm still afraid, but I'm not letting it make my decisions. And I think we'd have a beautiful kid. Maya would be an amazing big sister. She'd be bossy. Absolutely. It'll be great. They held each other in the quiet of their bedroom, planning a future that felt expansive instead of limiting, exciting instead of terrifying. 2 years after their wedding, Marissa walked across the stage to receive her graduate degree. Evan and Maya cheered so loud they got shushed by other attendees. Susan cried. Even Marissa's parents looked proud. That fall, Marissa started working full-time at the museum as an education coordinator, developing programs for kids Maya's age. Her eyes shone when she talked about her work now, the way they never had when she was in venture capital. Evan finished his bachelor's degree that winter, 12 years after he'd started it the first time. He applied for teaching programs and got accepted to start the following fall. The path to becoming a teacher would take another 2 years, but he had time. They had time. And in March, they found out Marissa was pregnant. Maya's reaction was everything they hoped for. Excitement, immediately followed by demands to know if it would be a girl or boy, what they would name it, whether it would like dinosaurs, and if she could teach it everything she knew. That's a lot of pressure for a baby, Evan said. I'm a big sister now. It's my job. Maya said it with such seriousness that both adults had to hide their laughter. The pregnancy was smooth, uncomplicated, in a way that felt like a gift after all the complications they'd navigated to get here. Marissa worked until a week before her due date. Evan finished his spring semester with straight A's. Maya drew pictures of what she thought the baby would look like, mostly purple dinosaurs with human faces. On a warm October evening, Marissa went into labor. Susan came to stay with Maya, and Evan drove them to the hospital with surprisingly steady hands. You're not freaking out, Marissa said between contractions. I'm saving the freak out for when the baby actually arrives. Smart. 12 hours later, they had a son. Small and perfect and absolutely terrifying, with Marissa's dark hair and Evan's nose and a cry that announced his presence to the entire maternity ward. They named him James, after Evan's grandfather. Maya came to meet him that afternoon and was uncharacteristically quiet, just staring at her baby brother with wonder. He's so small, she whispered. You were that small once, Evan said. No way. I've always been this size. Actually true, Marissa said. I think she came out 8 going on 30. Maya ignored them, too fascinated by James. Can I hold him? They showed her how, and she sat very still with her brother in her arms, already taking her role seriously. I'm going to teach you everything, she told James, about dinosaurs and space and how to deal with Dad when he's being overprotective. It's going to be great. Evan looked at his family, his wife, his daughter, his newborn son, and felt a rush of emotion so intense it threatened to overwhelm him. This was what he'd been afraid of, this absolute terrifying love, this feeling that his happiness was so complete it couldn't possibly last. But it was lasting. It had lasted through fear and doubt and all the obstacles they'd faced. And it would keep lasting because they'd built it on something stronger than passion or chemistry or even love. They'd built it on choice. On the daily decision to show up, to be honest, to work through the hard things instead of running from them. That night, after visiting hours ended and Maya had gone home with Susan, Evan sat in the hospital room holding James while Marissa slept. The baby was quiet, his tiny hand wrapped around Evan's finger, his eyes closed in that way newborns had of being both ancient and brand new at once. Hey, little man, Evan whispered. Welcome to the family. It's small, but it's pretty great. You've got a sister who's going to drive you crazy but also protect you from anything. A mom who's going to teach you to be curious and brave and to trust yourself. And a dad who's going to try his best not to screw this up too badly. James made a small sound and Evan took it as approval. Fair warning, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We struggle sometimes with money and schedules and figuring out how to balance everything. But we love each other. And we're going to love you so much it's probably going to be embarrassing when you're a teenager. Sorry about that in advance. The baby slept on, oblivious to the promises being made, the life being planned for him. Marissa stirred, opened her eyes. You okay? I'm perfect. We're perfect. This whole thing is perfect. Even though we're exhausted and James is going to wake us up every 2 hours, and Maya is going to be jealous sometimes, and our house is going to be chaos, especially because of all that, Evan moved to sit on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle James. I spent so long thinking I had to be perfect to deserve happiness, that I had to have all the answers and never need help and prove myself every single day. But perfect is boring. He gestured to encompass all of it. This messy, complicated, beautiful chaos is so much better than perfect. Marissa took his free hand. Look at you, getting all philosophical. It's the sleep deprivation. Makes me sentimental. I like sentimental you. They sat together in the quiet hospital room, their family complete in a way neither had imagined possible 2 years ago. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and changes and unknowns. Evan would start teaching, Marissa would advance in her career, the kids would grow and change and require different things, but they would face it together. As partners. As equals. As two people who'd found each other against all odds and decided that love was worth the fear, the work, the constant choice to keep showing up. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning in January, Evan stood in front of his first classroom as a student teacher. 25 10th graders stared at him with varying degrees of interest and skepticism, and he felt a rush of nerves followed immediately by certainty. This was right. This was what he was meant to do. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Mr. Cole. Let's talk about why math actually matters in real life." At home, Marissa was managing Maya and James with the chaotic grace of a mother who'd learned to adapt on the fly. Maya helped feed James his bottle, while Marissa graded papers from her museum education program. The house was a mess of toys and baby equipment and Maya's science projects, but it was their mess, their home, their life. When Evan got home that afternoon, excited and energized and full of stories about his first day, he found his family in the living room. Maya was showing James a picture book about dinosaurs, explaining each one with the seriousness of a documentary narrator. Marissa was on the couch, papers spread around her, smiling at their daughter's enthusiasm. "How was it?" she asked. "Amazing, terrifying. I think I might actually be good at this." "Of course you're good at it. I told you that 2 years ago." "You were right, as usual. I like when you admit that." Evan sat next to her, and Maya immediately abandoned the book to tell him about her day, about the experiment she wanted to try next week, about how James smiled at her even though everyone said newborns don't really smile yet. "He definitely smiled at me," Maya insisted. "He knows I'm his favorite." "You'll always be his favorite big sister," Evan said. "I'm his only sister." "Which makes you the favorite by default." Maya considered this logic, accepted it, and went back to reading to James. That evening, after the kids were in bed and the house was finally quiet, Evan and Marissa sat on the back porch they'd added to the house last summer. The yard was bigger than either had grown up with, space for a swing set they'd installed last month, and a garden Marissa was planning for spring. "Remember when you first asked me out?" Evan said. "You mean when you first turned me down?" "Best decision I ever made." "Rejecting me was your best decision?" "Made you work for it. Made us both figure out what we really wanted before jumping in." He pulled her closer. "If I'd said yes that first night, we probably would have crashed and burned within a month. I would have been too insecure. You would have been too focused on fixing things. We needed time to become people who could actually be together. That's very wise." "I have my moments." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge as the sky darkened. Their life wasn't perfect. Money was still sometimes tight. Schedules were still complicated. They still fought occasionally about whose turn it was to do dishes, or how to handle Maya's increasing demands for expensive activities. But it was theirs, built together, chosen every day. "I love you," Marissa said quietly. "I love you too. Even when you're impossible. Especially when I'm impossible. Especially then." Inside, James started crying, and they both stood automatically, a choreographed movement born of 3 months of practice. "I've got him," Evan said. "You handled the last feeding. We're a good team. The best team." He kissed her and went inside to comfort their son, and Marissa stayed on the porch for another moment, taking in the house, the yard, the life they'd built from honesty and trust, and the courage to keep choosing each other. Years later, when people asked how they made it work, how they bridged such different backgrounds, how they navigated the complexities of blended families and financial inequality, and all the things that could tear couples apart, they would give the same answer. They chose each other. Every single day, in small ways and large, they chose partnership over pride, trust over fear, honesty over comfort. It wasn't romantic in the fairy tale sense. There was no magic solution, no moment when everything suddenly became easy. But it was real, and it was lasting, and it was absolutely, perfectly theirs. The strongest relationships they learned weren't built on perfection or passion or even compatibility. They were built on two people brave enough to stop running, to let themselves be seen completely, to trust that love could be stronger than fear. They were built on the decision to stay. And Evan and Marissa stayed. Through the hard days and the beautiful ones, through the fears and the triumphs, through every moment that tested them, and every moment that proved them right, they stayed. And that made all the difference.